Welcome to the MDC Talks. We are the Motion Dance Collective, a screen dance production company that promotes the creation, presentation, and education of dance on film practice. Today we have Omari Motion Carter and James Williams and myself from the MDC team, and our guest on this episode is Seema Gonzai. Seema is an award-winning director and filmmaker with a specialism in screen dance film, training, and curation. First of all, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. We love to ask this first question to all of our guests, which is, what does the term screen dance mean to you?
Jumping straight in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you know what? I always find that so difficult to answer for lots of many different reasons. I was thinking about that question. I was like, how do I answer that? And I think one of the difficulties in answering that is because I'm a filmmaker essentially, and not a dancer and not a choreographer. I'm a digital artist, and back in the days when you filled out your Arts Council applications, you didn't know how to frame yourself. What am I? Am I an artist, video artist, digital artist, mixed media artist, multimedia? You know, it's like, oh, what sort of artist are you? But actually, you're just an artist, aren't you? You're just an artist who uses the medium of film. So yeah, screen dance, what that means to me. When I first came across it, it was dance for the camera. So I don't know how many years that was. And I started to delve into putting film and screen together as a practice, or I guess as an artistic practice, in 1999. So, or 1998. And it was introduced to me by a lecturer who, first of all, showed me Len Lei's work. So I don't know what that particular work would have been called. So to me, like, you know, communicating movement in a digital way, communicating emotion through the medium of film and digital ways is what screen dance meant to me back then. But now that I'm kind of working with dancers and choreographers, screen dance now, I believe, is an art form that brings together lots of collaborators. So it's a collaboration between dance, film, and music, and that's really important to me, that all three collaborate together pretty much at the same time. And it's just a really powerful way of bringing narratives, unusual narratives and unique narratives together through the medium of dance and film.
Right.
Mhm.
So I don't know if I've answered the question yet, because I'm probably still exploring what that is.
Of
Yeah.
course,
But,
us too.
but yeah, so that's what screen dance means to me. But yeah, initially it was dance for the camera, which I really understood because it was dance for the camera, and it was really like layman terms, and I literally did that when I first started. But now I feel that it's kind of evolving to look at lots of different ways of presenting dance through film. That includes installation-based work, as well as digital form work, as well as live events mixed with film. And I think there's huge scope for that. But I think, as always, within that, for me, it's about telling powerful narratives and communicating powerful narratives through the movement of body and film and music.
That's
Right.
great. Yeah.
Right. And it's so interesting that you mentioned, like those three things together,
Yeah.
because even now you look at institutions now, and everything is trained so separately. You study music, or you study dance, or you study theater,
Yeah.
or you study film, and there's not much hybridity going on in the training
In the
of
education.
certain
Yeah.
things. And then, so you can understand sometimes like the difficulties that can happen when we have this ideology of like a marriage between these different art forms, but they don't train together,
Exactly, yeah. And I've always tried to make sure it's a collaboration of all three, and that's what I think that's what's so incredible about it. It's highly cinematic. It's highly powerful through movement, and it's the soundtrack then carries those narratives, and it kind of stitches it together. So all three have to start together.
Do you think that
And
perhaps
so-
stems from your Indian classical dance
Background.
background?
I
The
knew you were
marriage of those things together. I know I'm bringing it. Come on now,
going to bring that up.
we're gonna talk. We're here to talk, Seema. We lit you up, girl.
Oh, you know, I was really, so like, when I was a kid, you know, I come from an Indian background, and, you know, my family are Hindus, my father's a Hindu priest.
Right.
So as a kid, you know, you go to all of these ceremonies, all of these festivals, Indian festivals, you know, I was kind of really finding it difficult to understand, you know, what day is it today, or what are we celebrating today, or who's which, you know, particular deity are we, you know, doing all these ceremonies for. I didn't know what, you know, I was finding it very confusing. So I said, you know what, Dad, I'll do you a deal. I'll do Bharatanatyam. And he went for it. He went, okay. So from the age of 11, I went to Bharatanatyam lessons every week. And so therefore I didn't need to go to the temple and do the lessons there. And I really enjoyed it. I was a really bad dancer, but you know, I really enjoyed the pure dance elements, which is all of the technical sides of it, and the emotional expression sides of it. I was terrible at. You know, they said, "Give me a sad face," and they go, "No, that's like you're going to throw yourself off a cliff face. Just give me a sad face." You know, like the Indian emotional kind of moves, I just could not do. So I did Bharatanatyam up until then, the age of 21. I kind of like carried it on. And so I kind of did it quite a lot up until the age of 16. And of course, the background to that is, you know, they would always then wheel me out at all of the community centres. Oh, Seema does Bharatanatyam. It's Diwali this year. Let's get Seema to do something. And of course, they were always filmed. So we're talking the 80s here. VHS cameras, really dodgy lighting, really bad set design, everything's bad. And they'd get me to like dance on this stage. People from, and it was amazing because you get, I'm from Blackburn, so you would get a lot of diverse audiences, really. A few Indians and a lot of white working class families and stuff who were watching it, and they'd dress up in saris and they'd come along, and it would be the community event for Diwali. But it was through filming it that I was like, and watching it back, and I was like, oh, this is like really bad, you know. I'm sure this could be filmed in a much better way, especially when you're brought up with Bollywood. You know, you watch those films, you're like, they film it really well, but I'm filming this and it's like really bad, it's really terrible. So, and that's where the two started to come together and started to blend into each other. So I studied film at college, and I was still dancing, and I guess that was always in the back of my mind. And then I didn't really put the two together until I did a degree, and it was only in the final year of a degree where I was introduced to Len Lai, where music, movement and film is actually a thing. And I was like, oh wow, okay. And then I did a master's in visual communication where I just kind of explored that a lot further. So the dancing's in there, and actually it's you know, I'm much later on now in my years, so, and it's coming through a lot more now. You know, I'm going back to my Bharatanatyam roots. I'm working with Bharatanatyam dancers, and I guess it's something that you don't lose.
Yeah.
But one thing I do know is that I'm very bad at it, so I'm really glad that I did feel naked and not dance. Really bad. So I try not to say I'm a dancer because I'm not at all. Not.
No, I just read that you know, that your background in that had sort of sparked your interest in film initially. That's sort of what originally drew you to filmmaking. So that explains why.
Full history of that now, yeah.
So your very first dance film was Kita. Is that right?
Yes.
And can you unpack what that experimentation was like at the time and how it might have shaped your creative process?
Yeah, because it doesn't have necessarily a body in it.
Yeah.
So I wonder how that was like received by, maybe as you were sharing that with perhaps a dance film crowd. Have you had any response to that?
So Kita is actually short for Kita Takatara Kita Tum, which is a dance move, a Bharatanatyam dance move.
Okay.
And
That's one move.
and so I just named it Kita because it was, sorry, what?
That's just one move. That phrase
that-
Yeah,
there.
it's Kita Kata 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 Thumb. It's just basically your hand goes around your it goes to the side, it goes up, and it just comes down in front of you.
Wow. Okay.
And then your feet do your feet do the same movements. A tabla player would do the same rhythm. So it's a very rhythmic. It's a rhythmic cycle. Yeah. So that's why it's called Kita for one. And so that I named it that because when you see the film, it was an experimentation of looking at how sound, color, visuals, shapes, patterns could all come together on film. And I experimented with that, drawing directly onto 35 millimeter celluloid film. So going through the process of somebody gave me 16 mil and 35 mil. I had to dye, I had to put it in baths of bleach to scrape off all the emulsion off it. Yeah. And then this is all at uni where I was introduced to Len Lye's work. It just so happened that at this uni, they had a Steinbeck, they had a print, they had a 16 millimeter dark room. It was really incredible that they had these facilities, and they had a 16 mil projector and a 35 mil Steinbeck. So I was a bit like, oh, I can edit film here, I can project it, I can cut it all by hand, and blimey, I can paint on it. So after watching a lot of Len Lye's films and Norman McLaren's films, I started to see that, oh, wait a minute, Bharatanatyam is all about lines. The costume itself is lines. It's all about symmetry. The bells vibrate. It's all about beats and rhythms and cycles and rags. So I wonder if I could try and represent that in a film. So I just did that. So it's a very abstract way of trying to show that film. And also it's really vibrant Indian classical dance. Yeah. It's incredibly technical. And I just wanted to make a film that gave you a sense of that, visual sense of that. So when you watch it, you feel like you are watching a performance, you're feeling that performance. And it's just an abundance of colour, movement, lines. It was an experiment, and the music that accompanies it, which is why I don't really, I can't really share it too many places, was a piece from Ravi Shankar, and I kind of tried to get that same rhythmic cycle, and I put them together. It just so happened that they came together, and I was working with the 16 mil frames, 24 frames per second, and wondering how many seconds I need. I've got reels and reels and reels and reels of this 16 mil. And I was cutting it together. I've actually got the original reel here somewhere, and it's
you still have it. Amazing.
It's as thick as my head. And so it took 9 months to do 3 minutes. At the end of that film, I then started to look at actual contact printing. So getting 16 mil unprinted, what is it called? Negative? No.
Yeah. Negatives? Yeah.
Negatives,
so you see kind of like taking it out, the negative. Oh God, I should know that, shouldn't I? Taking out the negative. You're in a dark room, you're coming up with those shapes and patterns, you're thinking of how many frames you've got to do. And I was literally in a dark room, I think, for months.
Wow.
That's so crazy to think. Like, I grew up in an era where we were just kind of leaving that. We had like a dark room, like a photography dark room in secondary school. I definitely remember that. And I was at a time where we were moving from tapes to DVDs. Cool. I remember that. But then I got into film around 2011. So and you can still make stuff on film now, but I get so fascinated when I watch Norman McLaren's work, Len Lye's work, even Maya Deren's work, and you see some of the effects that they managed to do on film, and I have no idea. I see a cross dissolve and I'm like, I have no idea how you do a cross dissolve on film. That meant how, so do you think I want to? I don't know, James, if you have like ever touched actual film yet. Did you buy a film camera recently?
I have some there on my
James is pointing out some on his front room table there. But yeah, I've never delved into it, and I just wondered whether it's like whether you would ever go back to working with film, or
Yeah.
whether you have, and whether you think it's beneficial for people to touch it. And James, maybe you can touch in on this as well. Yeah, because I'm a digital filmmaker.
We've never touched film.
I don't know if anyone has any comment on that.
I mean, it's not something that I've shot for a project, but I think if the right project came along that called for film to be used, I would absolutely love the opportunity to use it on a project. But I think it would have to be a reason rather than just for my own neuroses of wanting to shoot on film because it does something personally for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's still a place for it. I think the argument now for film versus digital and is one better than the other is just another tool now, in the same way that, you know, changing lenses or using different lights or, you know, all of these things are just tools now. And I think that film is another example of that. I don't think it's necessarily the norm anymore. And it's definitely diminishing in quantity of what we see. We're not seeing as much film anymore. So now it's just a choice and it's project dependent.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, because you see like even Beyonce in her
Homecoming used film. For the
yeah,
documentary.
she did like half film and half
digital
and kept switching between the two, which is so interesting because you get that kind of nostalgic old school feeling of like watching Michael Jackson on 4:3, like, you know. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, but
yeah, have
yeah.
you used film? Was that the only time you used it, or?
I mean, I wasn't filming. I was using a film camera, so it was a very different process, I guess. So you're drawing onto film. And
That's
so
really interesting. I've never heard of anybody doing that. That's
yeah,
it's really cool to hear you talk about that, because that's not a use that I'd ever thought about for film negative.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, the projector I was putting it through was really whirring. It was going as it was trying to put. And actually, what was really interesting was, so I did film the projection of it on a VHS camera, and so as it was going through the projector, though, you know, parts of it was disintegrating and parts of it was falling off, and I was like, oh, this is different now. This is quite an interesting process that actually the screening of the filming of this, or how it looks now, is quite different. And and I think, you know, these days you can get that same effect now, you know, when your computer goes to sleep. I remember a few years, you know, when that first thing came out, when people get in their laptops, the computer would go to sleep, and all of a sudden you'd see these like little patterns coming up, and then my heart sank, because I was like, no way, what would take me 3 months to make, it's on a computer screensaver. And we're so used to seeing it now. And I was like gutted, because I was like, that whole idea of doing it yourself by hand is kind of lost now, because digital kind of default has just created it as a kind of algorithm on your computer. So I don't think I'd go back to drawing on film for that reason, because if I did and someone saw it, if an audience was to see it, I think in their minds they'd be like, oh, but my computer does that.
Right.
And I think at the time it was really well received, because people will, you know, the audiences were like, you know, this is really innovative at the time.
Yeah.
I think now, it would be, that's one of the reasons why I wouldn't go back to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I imagine that the experimentation that you got, the time that you had to experiment with the film and make all those shapes and colors and patterns must have been really interesting. And I don't know, did it teach you anything that you sort of carried into your creative process as you moved into digital?
Perseverance. You know, if you're going to take 9 months to do one 3-minute film, you know, you've got to be seriously into it. And I was at uni, and my university friends were going out, you know, partying and stuff. And I had this little setup at home where I was scratching the emulsion off 16mm as well. So and they just saw me like with this little lamp and this table and a magnifying glass, and I'd just sit there for days, not move. And they'd be like, Seema, you still here? I'd be like, yeah. But I think it's just that kind of the understanding of how something moves within a frame, within a time. It's certainly something that embedded itself in my mind. Textures on film. What does texture look like? What does light look like? And how can you create? How can you add color to something? So I think it was really a lot of does different things, really.
There's a word for it, and I can't remember it now, but it's that word for when colors give a sensory thing. It's described in the film Ratatouille. So in the film Ratatouille, if you haven't seen it, it's about it's about a rat who makes food, right?
Yeah.
But there's a scene where they're tasting the food, and then all these colors explode behind to explain what the food is like. Oh, it's strawberry and cheese, and all these colors like pop up, and it's like there's a word for it of getting sense through color. But I really feel that in this film, that I get a feeling of movement. I get a feeling of
rhythm.
time and rhythm, and I can see dance within it. It's very interesting, and I can't remember what that word was. Someone in my masters wrote all about it, but it definitely reminds me of that. So it's very interesting, and I definitely suggest guys check it out. Go on Seema's website and check out Kita, because it's really.
I thought that was a plug for Ratatouille then.
I know, right?
Ratatouille and cheese.
Ratatouille stole from Seema, in my opinion. You need to get your 10%.
This is the youth of today. Like, Seema, your film reminded me of Ratatouille.
That's it. We've got to pull out the references, because that's a part of history now too.
Go to the website. There won't be a rat in it.
I'm writing a whole article, Seema, on the.
Oh my goodness.
Wicked. Alright, what we got next?
So
something else that comes up for me there then is you kind of mentioned, like, this thing that took you several months to create is now sort of made as a algorithmic response via digital process, and how I have this question about, like, the end result versus the skill that it takes to create that end result. I'm not really sure what my question is, but it's something that I feel like I come up against quite a lot, particularly working in digital now, because everybody has access to something that can record, something that can take photos. It's very, very easy for people to tap into the base level of filmmaking now. And I think people are able to achieve pretty good results with very minimal skill in this era, just because of the advancement of technology and algorithms and all the processing that's in mobile phones and things like that. Coming from a background where you had to have a lot more skill to create that base level of end result, if that makes sense. Do you sort of see is there a benefit to having the amount of skill and the amount of knowledge that you've had to acquire to do what you did? Does that have a benefit now that you have essentially a lot more power behind you in terms of how things are made now, and how the processing power and all of the digital assets and algorithms that you have available? Does that base level of skill bring you anything new in this era, do you think?
Well, I think we're always challenged. It's a challenging question because, if you're a filmmaker, you do get the difference between people who are readily can make something really quickly because they've got the tools and they've got access to tools. And like you said, you can shoot something, you can release it within a week if you wanted, or a day. But it doesn't necessarily mean you've got the experience behind it. So doing something quickly doesn't necessarily mean you've built up the skill to get something done quickly. You've got the tools to do something quickly. But as with doing something, maybe when you've got, back in the days of VHS or U-matic, editing, you can do things now all digitally, but actually by doing it on VHS and U-matic editing, you knew that you only had that one shot. You've got one take. You haven't got 10 takes. You've got one take. If you work on film, when you start working with your camera, you realize that actually I can't be spending reels and reels and reels. It costs a lot of money. So actually the skill in being able to create that one shot, that one scene that really we've got one roll of film for, you then adopt skills in knowing how to coordinate your productions better, really thinking it through better. Everything has to be storyboarded. Everything has to be set in a certain way, because you haven't got the luxury of just going, oh, I can take 50 pictures and pick the one and release that next week, you know. So I think certainly with the ways that I was working, you know, with equipment that didn't allow you to do things quickly, you're building up the skill then to really make sure that what you do shoot is something that is really, you know, is worth shooting, rather than shooting lots and lots and lots of stuff and then thinking, you know, I'll pick the best couple shots and then that's my thing. So I think your prep is where the skills come in, and then not only the prep, it's your ideas. So your ideas are then facilitated by the prep you need for the ideas, the research you need to do to get the ideas. Once you've got your idea, all the rest of it is it's not easy to do, but you could get yourself the best crew in the world and they would deliver that for you. But without that idea and the prep and the research and having the skills to actually deliver that as a director, or, you know, as a scriptwriter, or whatever your role is, or as an artist, then, you know, it doesn't make any difference how quickly you do it.
Right.
So yes, I think yeah, when you work with minimal equipment, it's the age-old thing, isn't it? Like someone will go, I take a photo on my iPhone, in comparison to somebody who has still never had a digital iPhone. They're taking pictures with their camera and they don't see the pictures until they're developed. Now that, you know, I have a few friends who still work that way, and the pictures they take are incredible. Yeah, and they capture a moment in such a way, and they know that that one shot is so precious. It has to capture that moment for many different reasons. And so you develop those skills when putting a piece of work together. And I think if you have if you just think, I've got the kit to do it, and the kit is foremost in your head before the idea, then that's where the difference really lies, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, lovely answer.
I want to ask you about Cycle Dialogues. We got to see a snippet of it a few years ago at Screen.Dance when you did your artist presentation. And, you know, we've watched it many times since, but what inspired you, first of all, to have that goal and to make that project? And secondly, obviously, because it took you so long to make, I think it was 7 years, I read, it took you to make that film. What else were you doing during those 7 years? Because I imagine you had to take breaks and spread it out and return to some sense of, you know, your normal life in between. I don't know. What was it like, that whole process?
Cycle Dialogues. I look back on that now, and my daughter's 4 years old now, and I think if I tell her about any of these things, I don't want her getting on a bike thinking she can do the same, because if she tries, I'm not going to let her.
Yeah.
I think back at that time now, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and I said, oh God, I was a nutter to do those things. An absolute, you know, I had got into quite a few scrapes, you know, during those years, and I was lucky. Nothing happened. I was all right. But Amy, yeah, so Cycle Dialogues was born because I'd finished my master's in visual communication, and I really, you know, as an artist, felt that I had to do a signature project. You know, I had to do something that was me, that was my voice, that was Seema, you know, because I'm in film, I'm an artist. You know, how am I different from anybody else? You've got to do that one thing that really defines you as you. And I was young, and I was thinking, right, oh, what is it that you really like doing? I said, I really like cycling. I come from Blackburn, it's full of hills, you know. It's just like I cycled everywhere. So cycling was always a thing. But the main thing for me about cycling is it's movement. You know, I've always been very physical, and I've always liked moving. And I wasn't dancing anymore. No, I was a very good dancer, but I wasn't dancing anymore. And so cycling was the next best thing to dancing. It was just like, I'm moving, I'm physical, I'm going places, it's exhilarating, it makes me feel quite alive. And of course, I'd listen to music while cycling, which you shouldn't do. You know, always wear a helmet, don't listen to music. And so it takes you to another place in your head, in your mind. And I was like, wait a minute, you're cycling everywhere. You're, an artist. And also I came from Blackburn. I'd moved to Birmingham. Blackburn's a really community-driven place. I'd gone to Manchester and Salford and Wolverhampton in between. I went to Birmingham, and I loved Birmingham because it was community. And so I was like, well, I like cycling, I like communities, I like moving. Why don't you do something about cycling projects, sort of thing?
Yeah.
So Cycle Dialogues came along because I wanted to do a signature project. And at the time, Ella MacArthur, is her name? Anna MacArthur had circumnavigated the world on a boat by herself. She was a British young lady. BBC had given her cameras. This is before the age of reality TV. They'd given her cameras, and she documented the whole thing, and it was her on her own. I was like, that's incredible. I was highly inspired by her. I thought, you know what, I'm going to do the same, but this time I'm going to do it on a bike. And what's different about the sea to going on land is you meet people. And I'm a chatty person. I like communities. Let's explore communities on a bike. So that's how it was kind of born. So the first place I went to was Thailand and Vietnam and Cambodia. And at that time, they'd only just opened the borders between Thailand and Cambodia and Vietnam. So you could go through both, on foot if you wanted. Before, you had to fly into them from Thailand, but they'd opened up the borders, and I thought, wow, this is incredible. And there was a book, a Lonely Planet book, on cycling those countries. So I took the book, I took some cameras, I went to Thailand, I bought a bike, and then I tried it. So and it was incredible. So after the first few kind of rides in Thailand, I'd never been away before, and I'd never been on my own before. I didn't know what I was doing.
Wow,
I didn't really know how to change a tyre either. What to do with it. But I had this kind of wanted to just take a bit of time out from studying, and I thought this would be a really great thing, but I didn't, and so I started to realise the bicycle was taking me along lots of B roads, so you couldn't go on the main roads, obviously. And I started filming everything and filming people that I'd meet, and was really finding a different way of exploring those countries. So, and realising, like Vietnam for me was amazing because, meeting just lots and lots of women, and lots of women tell me their stories about how it's a matriarch country, and telling me the kind of structure of the country, and that was really quite interesting because being a woman on a bike, and I was very, very dark then because of the sun had, I soaked up the sun, and Vietnamese women were very, very, they do everything to stay out of the sun. And so I was stuck out like a sore thumb. But a lot of the women that I came across instantly just wanted to know my story, and I wanted to know theirs. So it kind of then propelled from there. And so it took 7 years, and I'd do like 4 months and then come back, and then do another project and come back. The Arts Council started to take an interest when I came back from the first Vietnam ride, and I happened to just say to them, I've just done this project, I filmed it on this. They said, we'd really like to see how you put that together. So I put something together, and that became an installation piece. And then I, after that, went to Hungary, France, Czech Republic and Ireland. So I was funded to then go to those countries. And each time it was about exploring communities that were there. So Hungary was more about looking at the kind of gypsy community, the Indian heritage of the people that I was meeting, and then me being in this country, not representing that, but like as an Asian female in the country. France was all about, the Tour de France, and me actually just not doing the Tour de France really slowly, but actually just a different take on cycling the country. And then Ireland was more about looking at how I could connect Birmingham Irish people back to their country, which is very much like, I'm a British Asian. I don't know anything really much about India. And it was very much like what the Birmingham Irish community felt the same, So I was like, well, I cycled Ireland and connected stories between the two.
Wow.
I tried India, but that was a good job that I didn't do it really. So.
Yeah, it's just incredible. And like you said, it's not something that someone would maybe be able to accomplish now with the world as it is now. Maybe they could, but I don't know if as many people would be that brave.
I think there's a lot of, I mean, again, TV, you know, as soon as I did that, who was it? Hugh McGregor did his, I'm going to go on a motorbike and go around the world. Oh, yawn. You know, everybody's done it before you. You've got a whole massive film crew. Who cares? You know, what's his name? That comedian took his fridge around France. Yeah, so what? You took a fridge around France. There's a comedian who wrote a book about it. And I actually, you know, and I was like, yeah, but you know, what are you actually exploring here, you know? And then every single celebrity, I'm going to go in a black cab and do this, I'm going to go in a rickshaw and do that. And so everybody's done it now, and we've all got sat nav, we've all got mobile phones, we've all got the internet. It wouldn't be the same experience. I'm not going to do it again. But I felt like at the time it was something that was quite an innovation in exploring and using film and sound in that way.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And doing it all alone, like solo. Crazy.
Yeah. Really, I think about it. I mean, I tried my best to kind of look very, the hair was back, a cap was on, you know, tried my best to not look, you know, like a target really. You know, baggy trousers, you know, just looked a little bit unkept. But you know, didn't have all the cycle gear, you know, where you see everybody with all their stuff, and you know, I wasn't like that at all. So yeah, I think it was very, very lucky to have done it, and very, very lucky to have survived it.
Yeah,
Right.
incredible.
That's really...
And obviously, your more recent work is focused on accessibility and working with and creating work for disabled artists. What motivated you to explore that path? And when did that sort of transition happen in your career? Because you've made so many films now with, you know, multi-sensory, accessible, inclusive, you know, work, as we saw in your artist presentation as well. So can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, well, mate, I think after, so it was a bit of a diversion really from, it's the first time I got back into dance, because obviously it was all cycle, I was known as the artist on the bike and stuff. I was getting a bit tired of cycling, my joints were hurting, so I'm not doing that anymore. And in MenCap, I happened to be working in a special needs school. It was called a special needs school back then, it's changed its name now and title, but I was working in a school, and I was shadowing an artist who happened to be doing something with dance. And I was shadowing them and told them about my background in dance and that I was a filmmaker. So MenCap came to me and they said, oh, we've got this dance group, we'd really like you to work with them. Can you make a little film that we want to show at the Olympics? So I was like, okay, a little film for the Olympics didn't quite sound like a little thing to me. So I was like, well, tell me who this dance group are. And they were called Free Fall Dance Company. They're associated with Birmingham Royal Ballet, so they're all ballet dancers, and they all have varying levels of learning disabilities. I was absolutely fascinated when I saw them move, because I was like, actually, I've never seen a body move like this before. There's 11 dancers, all uniquely moving in their own unique way, pertaining to their health or condition, and also how they understood and communicated dance, and also how they expressed it. I was like, this is pretty amazing. So we kind of made the first film, and that got shown, and then we made another 2 after that. So the first film was more about showcasing who Free Fall were, and that was shown as part of the Olympics on these things called live sites. So there was like a big screen in a city, and it was 24 cities across the UK had this big screen, and that particular film was shown. And the Arts Council were like, what's even done now? I was like, I just made this film. So then we said we need to do a second one now, not as a showcase of who Free Fall are, but like you know, who they are as people, because we need to know who these individual people are. So One Fine Day was then born, where Free Fall were able to choose their locations, choose their storylines, choose their narratives, and choose how it all went together. And so that was quite a fun piece to do. And then the final piece was about how now do we know who Freefall are, we've got their individual characters. Now how do we actually profile Freefall as ballet dancers? They are ballet dancers. You know, they're no different from anybody else. They're ballet dancers. In my mind, they're always just ballet. They are ballet dancers. Yeah. They don't have a disability. I'm always like, they don't. You know, they're ballet dancers. So that's when we collaborated with the principal dancers from the RB, and two of them came forward and said we'd love to do it. And we fashioned a kind of narrative that looked at how we could bring them together. And that was really challenging for Freefall. And it really pushed them physically and choreographically as well. And both fed off each other. And that was a really nice film to kind of finish the trilogy on. So, and then after that I saw another sharing of deaf-blind and complex disabled dancers. I just so happened to go to this sharing. I was sitting there, and again, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the most amazing work I've ever seen. It was literally a hand touching a shoulder and moving it. And that's you know, and a hand touching a knee and pulling it up. But the difference is these two dancers were deaf, blind, and complex disabled. Wow. I was like, you are navigating yourself in an environment with an audience, and you're doing this routine, and I was blew me away. Absolutely, you know, hairs on the back of your head, you know, never seen anything like it. You know, I've seen lots of dance performances before, but just that little lift of the knee, touch of the shoulder, I was like, nothing gets close to that. So I went to Sense and said, you've got to make this into a film. And they went, no. Their initial reaction was, sorry, but you're missing the point, Seema. They said, how can you make a dance film for dancers who are deaf, blind, and complex disabled? Right. And I was like, that's a valid point. So I kind of went away and went, it's a valid point, but we still need to make it. And it took a year of talks after that. I was like, we have to make this film. I said, for lots of different reasons, for a mainstream able-bodied audience has to see this work. Mm-hmm. But we will find ways of also finding different digital ways of then turning this film into an experience through the senses as well. So we explored that alongside it.
Mm.
Yeah, I think it was bloody fantastic.
Yeah.
I when we watched it at Screen Dance 2020, I was like, Anna, wow. Like halfway through the project, I was like, I've never seen anything like this before. Never. The fact that everyone can literally experience and watch this film and get something for that. And there's no film I've never seen
anything like it before. Yeah.
Even wasn't there, correct me if I'm wrong, was there a way to view it where you could feel it as well?
Yeah, so the first version, so the mainstream version, we decided forget that, scrap that. So the mainstream version didn't have audio description or subtitles, captions. Right, forget that, because actually this film is supposed to be for everyone. Right. So forget the mainstream, able-bodied audiences, because that we're separating people again. So forget that. So we scrap that straight away. Right. So the second, we've just two versions. So the one version is audio described with captions and with movement. And what's really important is Caroline and Joe, who are the two main dancers in the film, who are complex disabled. They are the leaders of that dance film. And I really hope that when people watch it, you're feeling like, you know, they are accompanied by two other dancers, but it's not about them. It's about Caroline and Joe, how they're experiencing the space, how they're in, you know, the mise-en-scene of the film is that we're in a dark space with some lights, because they can feel the warmth of the light and they can see little bits of light. Yeah. So we recreated an environment that Caroline and Joe are used to. And so we captured the movements that they improvised when we were there. So nothing was set. You know, it's a filmmaker's nightmare. Light is not set, space isn't set, movement isn't set. All you've got is two people with steady cams and me going, ah! The second version that we made was that with the sound in the first original version, we got a vocalist in who sang the movement. So she's vocalizing what you see on the screen. She got amazing, I was going to say amazing tongue, but roll a tongue.
Okay, yeah.
She got amazing vocals.
Yeah.
So she vocalized the movement. So you could, so the vocalization of that movement, she made sure she did the rolling of the tongue enough to create vibration. So then when you wear a sub-pack device on your back, you feel the dance. So that is your dance film. You're feeling it. So you could be in a complete dark room wearing a sub-pack and you are viewing a dance film, experiencing a dance film.
Yeah.
So that second version, we really want to be able to have that as installations. Yeah, so that's both pilots. So sorry,
has that second version appeared as an installation yet, or is that the hope, the next step?
I think it was set to be in a gallery down south somewhere, and we would like to speak to Jerwood to see if there's a possibility that we could create a tour with it. So the idea is that both pieces would be shown, one we'd already described, and then the other shown in another room where you're just in a dark room wearing a sub-pack. And I think that would be, that would just be such a nice installation piece. But yeah, with it, because of COVID, it's been on hold really for us to be able to do that. But yeah, we're really excited about it. We're really excited about where that could go. And I'm just so pleased that Suspended Motion is being programmed in festivals, and it's being programmed in dance film festivals. It's not programmed in a disability category. It's not programmed in a community category. It's a dance film. Yeah. And Caroline and Joe are dancers, and I'm just so happy that that's how it's been profiled.
Yeah, that's the one thing I really love about dance film festivals, is that you can headline with people who've been making work from before you, after you, higher production values. Like, it's about a lot of the time they theme their content, which is really nice, based on the narrative and the story, depending on what festival you go to. But in theater it doesn't work that way. Akram Khan would headline on these 2 weeks, and then we'd probably get the smaller theater on the on the side on those two Saturdays, But so the fact that we can all come together and also invite all of these different bodies to be in the same space at the same time, seeing people of color, seeing people of different ages, seeing people of different abilities, it's something that people who are maybe just getting into the screen dance now don't necessarily realize that value it has to open up the space. And I have nothing more to say, but that was it. But that's why I love it so much, is that we can, and you've been such a forerunner for that, bringing those bodies onto the screen, into the space. I think one of your pieces was one of the first pieces I ever saw that had people with disabilities in it when I started joining the screen dance circuit. And so yeah, I think you're awesome. Because I imagine it comes with so many challenges. And I remember you saying a story of them watching it back one time. It might have been One Fine Day, I can't remember, one of those pieces, and they were Freefall were watching back their content. And can you remind me what they said when they were watching it back? Did they enjoy it, or did
you just want me to remind you because you just want me to tell you, don't you? Yeah.
I don't want to recall the story wrong.
Don't want to say it incorrectly. Yeah.
So their response was, "It's rubbish." I looked at Lee, the choreographer, and went, "Lee, they don't. Oh no!" And he went, "Don't worry, Seema, she's laughing. She's having a laugh." And they all just kind of laughed. They all clapped, and then they all laughed. I'd never seen people. They all laughed because they were pointing at, seeing each other on the screen, laughing their heads off, and just saying. And then the classic review. It's rubbish. Apparently, it was a really good review.
Amazing.
That's awesome.
So I know we heard a little bit about that process from your artist presentation. But what was there? Was there one particular thing or something that really stood out to you in the learning process from making those films and working with those artists within the medium of screen dance?
Yeah, yeah, it was a very, very, very tough process, because you're speaking on behalf of artists who have a difficulty in communicating their thought processes to you, and you're in a position where you're interpreting that for film. And I think that was the toughest thing, you know. 'Cause you have Caroline and Joe who communicate in such different ways, and the choreographer was thinking one thing, I was thinking another. Sense, who are absolute experts in understanding communication and communication needs and people's needs. We had all of these different heads in one space. It was a very tough collaboration, I've got to say. It took 6 months
Yeah.
to get up to the point of filming. And as much as on the first day I had my shot list and I had my setups, and I had the lighting setups, we'd had a test day, the crew were there, they were all ready. The first day of shooting, we had 40 minutes. 40 minutes.
Wow.
And it was simply because it had rained outside and Caroline had got wet. She wasn't happy, and she gave us 15 minutes worth of dance.
Yeah.
Joe gave us a little bit more. And it's things like that. It's just you're in an environment where everybody has to be on the same page, and that's very, very difficult when anything can change at any particular time. And then once the film was made, I went very screen dancey on it. A classic screen dance. Oh, it's going to go there. It's going to the festival, so it's got to be screen dance. It's got to give us a narrative. It's got to give people an experience. And we went to and fro about what that looks like, because we are the voice of somebody else. And then ultimately, can Caroline and Joe experience this film? Because if they can't, what's the point in making it? It was very, very difficult. It's challenging because the collaboration of it. So I'd certainly, take those challenges with me when it comes to other projects. And collaboration is the key, I think, when it comes to screen dance. I tend to use the same crew each time now, because they understand me as I'm feeling my way through understanding directing and communicating my ideas through directing. They're starting to understand that a lot more. And it's really important to try and keep the crew, your core crew, as the crew that you always work with.
Yeah, because you develop a relationship and things happen
I
quicker.
think you grow together, really. Yeah. You really do grow together. But yeah, that was that was really hard, the last project. And they will all say the same thing. We fell out and got back together, and fell out and got back together. Not badly, but it's just differences of opinion. But our passion was always with Caroline and Joe. Mm-hmm. They are the leaders of this. Mm-hmm. We want to put them in a position of power, in a position where able-bodied people maybe have never really seen before, and that was our end goal, really. So,
and it's amazing listening to you talk about it, because it is such a huge responsibility, being able to translate that communication to other people. And I guess that's maybe it's just a thought, but maybe that's one of the reasons so many people have not dared or been brave enough to try before, because they were worried about misconstruing something, or
all the questions that come with constructing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a thought, but yeah, it's so exciting to see it and experience it, and I hope that it travels far and wide, because I think everyone should experience it.
And it actually releases my fear in some ways, because when you work with people who are maybe outside of your usual circle of what you experience and know, it can be difficult to, if someone says, well, the first time I got asked to do a workshop for a group of over 60s, I was thinking to myself, I wonder if they're going to be able to do any of the things that I would usually teach my 15-year-olds or my 21-year-olds, and then I go in there and it's no different. They're just like, it was too easy, Omari. We needed more, and it's so, until you go in and actually experience working with people, different types of people, and it's only been in my screen dance journey that I've had that pleasure of actually doing that, working with so many different types and different bodies and different minds. So seeing that work and work like that makes me go, oh, like we should think about that, and I think that's so important as well, as like other filmmakers seeing this work and not being afraid to actually contact some of these artists and companies and offer their time and really delve into that, because I don't think it's any different. Like you said, you didn't feel that they were a ballet company. And my mum works a lot with, my mum's one of your biggest fans as well. My mum.
She's, your mum.
Yeah, she works in disabilities, yeah. So she'd say to me, they're no different, Omari. I don't treat them any different. I shout at them like how I shouted at you when you were misbehaving. But yeah, it makes me want to do that more as well, and actually help to get more stories out there and be a voice for other people who may not be as vocal as the rest. So yeah, man. Wicked.
You know what? A lot of audiences are divided with that film, because I've got getting it shown, but I do get requests for, oh, can you give me a behind the scenes documentary? It's almost like I need to know,
right?
What really is going on here. And at first, we did have those conversations. A lot of people have said, directors, really big, kind of well-established directors say, you could really do with a supporting documentary. But actually, I was like, no, you don't actually need to have that. If you don't get it from watching this, that there are two dancers who are performing in a space, expressing themselves, telling you who they are, then why do I need to say, have a documentary go, this is a film about such and so, and this is what they are, this is where they live, and this is what their disability is. No, it doesn't need that. And and so we've gone through that process of, and I'd happily do talks about it, but we don't need a supporting documentary to give you the backstory, because
it doesn't need an explanation.
And then who would that be for? Right, it's for the people who can access it and understand, And so
it's the challenge of seeing dancers who you wouldn't. No, I'm trying to get the right words here. It's the challenge of seeing disability on screen. You instantly think, I need to know more about that person that's on screen. I don't quite understand. Because what my ideas of what dance is principal dancer jumping and doing leaps and doing that. But is this, you need to tell me why I'm watching this. But it's like, no, I don't need to tell you that, because the audio description in the film is telling you what Joe and Caroline are doing and how they're feeling. That's enough for you to understand.
Yeah, because then they're trying to bring it back to the disability. And that's not what we're trying.
Not the purpose.
I find that with people of color on screen, a lot of the time they want you to be talking about issues of your color or something, but can I just be telling a story, and that's the power of it, because a lot of times you actually see people with disabilities making dances about their disability sometimes, or you'll see people of age talking about what it's like to be older. But it's like, no, just be you, this is what it's all about. And I think we get so conditioned to seeing people in that way in digital work, maybe through documentaries or other little things like that. And I think, screen dance breaks that a little bit and goes, no, we can all make art. And that doesn't necessarily, that has to be so connected to ourselves in that sense.
I mean, screen dance is still a storytelling tool.
Yeah,
it's an absolute storytelling tool. It's got the backstory in there. You just got to find it.
Right.
You just got to watch it and see it in the hand movements. You've got to see it in the interaction between each other. It's a storytelling medium, just like any other genre that's out there. So you're trying to say something. Even if you're going down the more technical route of screen dance, and you're looking at the language of of film and the framing of the body, but you're still trying to say something. You're saying, look at this language that we are exploring. So you don't need a documentary to tell you that that's what it is, you know, because that is the medium that it is. Yeah. So we were on the cusp of making this documentary, and it's only recently that we've just gone, no, do it. It is film, you know. Watch it and take from it what you understand, and if you don't understand, then do some research and come back to it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Amazing. I think what was eye-opening for us, especially when we were able to watch your artist presentation from this year's Screen Dance Festival 2020, where it's sort of a little bit of an insight into behind the scenes, a little bit of insight into the process and the artist that you worked with and the choreographer you worked with, and that collaboration. And obviously you've repeated that word so many times because that's clearly very close to the center of your work, collaboration. But what I loved about that little short video was exactly that. We see the collaboration between you, the choreographer, the artists, the camera, like how every element sort of was able to come together to make the film Suspended Motion. So we will definitely put it in the link under the podcast for people to check out, because it's for someone who's curious and wants to understand a little bit more. I think that's fantastic because it really opens your eyes to all the different mediums that you were using to make the film accessible, to make it inclusive.
Yeah, I mean, I think this with that particular, this might be quite interesting for James, is with that particular, because I was fresh off filming that and editing it and releasing it. That presentation, I talked a lot about just how everything was not set. You know, like I literally got the schedule and shot list and ripped it up, threw it in the bin.
Oh, wow.
After 6 months, James, of just going, this is what it is. I reckon we could achieve this in this day. Test days with, 2 camera guys, 4K, everything's there, everything's set within, to do that. Have you ever done that? I don't know. It was like, I didn't know, my heart kind of sank, but also released me at the same time. And then the next day, I went in with no real plan, because we just had to go with the experience.
Right.
And I wish I'd done that from the start, really. But I think as a filmmaker, you can't help yourself but go, actually, this is a film, we do need to get certain shots. Yeah,
and to release yourself of that is quite daunting. It gives me anxiety just hearing you say rip up the shot.
How do you feel about that, James?
I mean, it's part of the process, isn't it? Well, like you were saying earlier as well, a lot of the skill is in the preparation. So you've done all of that prep, and then to know in yourself what it was and what you wanted to capture, sort of inside out, I imagine, the day before the shoot, you know that prep work pretty well. So I suppose at that point to then have the peace of mind to sort of say, you know what, let's just let it go in a different direction. But you still have that foundation. I mean, I've had some horror stories on shoots in similar situations where things have just not gone our way, and we've thrown the shot list out the window and we've thrown the storyboard out the window and gone, you know what, this whole film is going to have a different ending. We're just going to throw the end of this entire thing that we've planned for 4 months. We're going to throw that out the window, and we'll just make a different end right here on the spot. But that prep work really informs being able to do that. So I think as scary as it is to say, okay, we have no plan right now, you still have all of that foundation, and that's where the skill of the filmmaker, I think, is seen. So yeah, it's a horror story, but it's also a testament to knowing your shit, I think.
yeah, I think so I'm always when it comes to directing these things, I'm usually end up being a director as well as the production manager, and you're still got you're the person with the schedule. I never have budgets big enough to say, oh, someone look after the schedule, someone look after this. So yeah, you're always wearing many hats, aren't you? But yeah, that was it was one of the most challenging shoots I've ever been on. I've got to say. And I feel like everybody needs to have an experience like that, because anything else I've done since then is just a breeze, you know. And I almost want to have a backstory on that, you know, more about when you're there on the day shooting, this is how it can work, you know. But yeah, you know, it's yeah, I'm really pleased with where it's at the moment. It's in Aesthetica Film Festival this year. Yeah, and we're so pleased. It's got into another one, and we just want to keep having it being shown.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Amazing. Well, congratulations. And we'll all be watching, but hopefully it goes far and wide, as it should.
Yeah, we really hope so. Really hope so.
Can I interject something from earlier on, from right at the beginning of the discussion?
Yeah.
I wrote something down. You were in the flow. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I'm going to slip it back in. You mentioned when you were doing the festivals in I think Birmingham. You said that they were filming the festivals that you guys were dancing in and doing like community events for.
Mm-hmm.
You said that the films never really translated that well, and you compared it to how they film the same movement and the same styles of movement in Bollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And you said how you know the festival films that they were doing there and the way that it was represented in Bollywood was so different, and that Bollywood could pull it off. It didn't seem to work so well in the format that it was happening in the UK. Can you talk a little bit about maybe why the Bollywood stuff for you translated better, or in a way that did translate, and the comparison between why those two approaches were so different in your opinion?
So what the background to that was, it was in Blackburn, and when I say festivals, there were Hindu festivals, so like Diwali festival, Holi festival, ceremonies. You know, you'd be in a general, and you'd always get a group of young girls, young Indian girls from the community who go to that temple. They're not dancers. I was always one of them. And you always pick a film. You always pick a song that's from a Bollywood movie that was out that year. So we're talking 80s here. And that's a standard thing. Everybody, even today, everybody does that. You roll out the lads that have learned a little bit of the keyboard, and all of a sudden they're trying to rehash, you know, an Indian famous song on their keyboard, and they just stood there wearing their suit. They got the keyboard and they're playing it terribly, you know, but they've got the right kind of keys and they're trying to sing the song. But you know, for Indian communities, for them that's like a really great entertainment. And the same goes with dance. So you find a really good song with a good piece of dance in it that you've seen in a Bollywood movie, and then you recreate that, you put it on stage, and you dance it. So as part of that festival, there'd be 5 or 6 songs. I'd do one of them, and then they asked me to go behind the camera and just film the stage of it. Stage production. But because we're watching the Bollywood films to copy all the moves, it was embedded in your head what the Bollywood style, what the Bollywood looked like, and what your version on the stage looked like. So it's then that I was like, oh, you know, everything's been lost in translation. Yeah, of course, you know, the girls are like really young. They physically look different. They're really young. They're not really getting the moves right. Their face, they're not even smiling. You know, the backdrop's just like one sari that's hanging off. You know, the light is just, you know, someone's got these powerful lights. I was just like, oh, this is just awful. You know, it's not the complete vibrant, shiny, high-end camera, red, rich, colourful version that we see on the Bollywood films that we've just been watching for 6 months to copy. So that I'd say lost in translation was the biggest thing. Would be the biggest thing, the way to describe it. So after that, I was really intrigued in how the Bollywood versions were highly choreographed pieces of film, you know, and technical, really, really technical. You know, the cameras that they use. I mean, today the cameras and the movement and everything. You should watch Bollywood. So a few Bollywood music pieces, dance pieces, because they're incredible, absolutely incredible. But they will never be called a dance film because it's Bollywood. But they, you know, some of them are. They really are. I mean, I know they're selling a piece of music. Ultimately, the music comes first, then the dance comes after, and then they're actually selling the film. So the purpose of making it is different. The intention of making it is different. But actually, the way they filmed it is no different from a dance film.
Seema, because I'm not from that world, could you recommend
Yes.
something we should watch?
Some Bollywood.
Is there anything in particular that is quite famous out there? It could be old school as well. Something that we should tap into and have a little watch of that you could remember.
Oh, you know what? I don't really watch Bollywood films now. I tell you what. A good thing to do is just to put Bollywood. I would just go into Google search into YouTube and put top 10 Bollywood songs.
Okay. And then the dances will come with it.
I did that with my daughter the other day, and she was like, her eyes are like this. It was a feast to her eyes. She'd never seen anything like it. You see Bollywood, and if you do watch them, James, in Bollywood movies, they're actually not they're not dancing that fast. It's all speeded up. So it's, you know, shutter speeds up. You know, everything's like ramped up. You can see that they speeded it to fit the music, and everything's. I was tired after like 1 minute of watching the stuff now, and I've actually got
a few friends who work in the Bollywood scene, so I've seen a little bit of the on-set stuff that they post. Wow. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it's they're amazing. They're amazing. Yeah, everything's choreographed. Everything's for the camera. You know, they're really great things to watch. But yeah, you know, my 80s tripod camera VHS Persian was just, you know, I just film it, and I just knew that this isn't, you know, it's not translating in the same way.
Yeah. So, last question. Can you talk to us about what's coming up next for you and how our listeners can sort of follow your work?
Yeah, what's next? I'm going a little bit off piece in the sense that, yes, it's still film and it's still dance, but in a completely different way, more of a live event way. So it's bringing large-scale events with dance and music and a sensory experience of dance. Okay. So last year at Fat Flat Film Festival, fortunately, because of COVID, this got postponed, but we're doing a live event of Singing in the Rain, the film Singing in the Rain, where as an audience you could go and watch the film, you could learn the dance piece of Singing in the Rain, and it was a kind of inclusive live event where you could sit, you could watch the film, you could hear the music, you could take part and participate in the film, in the dance piece that comes up in the film. And we wanted to make that particular event as accessible as possible. So the film was going to be captioned, the particular dance, the famous dance scene was going to be audio described, and that everybody who came along to the event, the audio description would enable people to actually do the dance as well, sat on chairs as well. So bringing forward the whole suspended motion learning of people down as film should be for everyone. That's now couldn't happen. So the next idea that I'm exploring now is Alice in Wonderland and the Tea Party.
Oh, man.
Making the sensorial experience of the tea party through taste, touch, movement, film, and sound. So watching the film, it's going to be outdoors, and so we're just kind of exploring that really. So it is dance, because the whole of that tea party will be turned into a dance piece, but it will be danced by the participants sat watching the film.
That sounds really exciting. I can't wait.
So that's, so in terms of screen dance, I don't know, I'm not quite sure at the moment what I'd like to do, but I seem to be going back to my Bharatanatyam roots. So there could be something there could be something there.
Amazing. Awesome.
That's amazing. And how can our listeners follow you? What have you got? You on the gram, Seema?
So I'm really, if you got to look out for Seema Ghonsai Films. So I have a website which is under reconstruction, but I think it's still up. So seemaghonsai.com. And I'm on Instagram. I don't know what it is, but to be honest, there's no other spelling of Seema Ghonsai across the world. You're not going to get it wrong. If you just type it in, you'll find it. That's why I stuck to my name, because I thought if I put my name as anything else, there's no point, because there's only one Seema Ghonsai in the world. It's spelled in a bit of a different way, that's all. So, yes, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. So Facebook is Seema Ghonsai Films, and then Instagram and Twitter are Seema Ghonsai. But yeah, you will find me.
Fabulous.
Thank you so much. Oh, I remembered. Color synesthesia. Wait, colored synesthesia is called. And that is when the color evokes one sense evokes another sense. So seeing color might evoke some numbers, or they'll evoke a feeling, or there's some people who learn better via seeing colors. That's what Keita reminds me of. Color synesthesia. There you go, our listeners. A little bit of theory there, color theory for you. But
it's not too different from Ratatouille, is it really? It's got the same amount of
it's the same color synesthesia going on there in the scene. And see, people are using these techniques everywhere. And not in a bad way. Anyway, Seema, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, we wish you all the best in everything that's going on in the future. And, you know, we're big fans, so we're going to keep following and sharing your work to everyone we come across. So yeah, thank you once again for giving us your time.
Yeah, thank you.
No, it's really been a pleasure. There's yeah, and likewise, I watch all of your work, and yeah, it's great. Keep making, keep moving, keep getting it out there. It's really you guys who collaborate together. You know, you're growing the more you're making, and it's a delight to see.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much, Seema. Oh, awesome. Cool. Onwards and upwards. This is the MDC Talks.